to Culture here on I-24 News. I'm Oded Grober. Thank you for joining me. Today on our show, we'll talk to director Ralph Bakshi about his return to animation. Skateboarding becomes popular in Uganda. And we'll trace the roots of the banjo. Ralph Bakshi is an American director known for his unique adult-themed animated films such as Fritz the Cat, Fire and Ice, and Heavy Traffic. For the past 2 decades, he has stayed away from Hollywood, focusing instead on painting and teaching. But now, Bakshi has returned with Last Days of Coney Island, a new short film funded through Kickstarter, which takes place in 1960s New York, tells the story of a cop in love with a prostitute and a host of other characters. Joining me now via Skype is Ralph Bakshi from New Mexico. Hi, Ralph. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So you've been away from directing for a few years before this project, and I'm curious, what made you decide to come back to filmmaking?
My son came to me. Well, I left animation because the Hollywood system wasn't working for me. In other words, I couldn't stand working for them, and I couldn't stand what they were trying to make me do, so I just left to paint pictures. Basically, I'm an artist, so I didn't leave anything. I went back to my studio and painted. I didn't want to deal with them. My son came to me and told me about Kickstarter and the internet and what was going on, and how all these young kids were still looking at all my movies, and they were emailing me. So he raised money on Kickstarter, which I could not believe. It's called crowdfunding here. And we raised money for a 5-minute movie that I decided to make, because he said everyone wants another movie from me. And when I started to make the movie, it got longer and longer because I couldn't make a short movie. So I went to my wife and I asked her for some more money. So once that was over, I got it. She takes care of the money in the house and the dogs. Basically, we did it, and I'm very happy I did it.
Okay, so are we. Certainly we're happy. But what was it about this story that was so important for you to tell?
Oh, I can tell you. All right. Most important, well, the story is, first of all, the story is about what happened to America in the 60s. In the 60s, we had a lot of people who were trying to fight for rights of humanity killed. There was Martin Luther King, there was Malcolm X, there was Robert Kennedy, and there was Bob Kennedy. And then there was the kids at Kent State who got shot. And I certainly, it affected me very much. But before that, I thought, the country was much different, that could never happen here. As a matter of fact, we've never really been the same since then. Except for Obama, because he's the worst. So I wanted to discuss what was happening there during the 60s to these people's lives, because everyone's life was being affected by all of this madness in government and in Vietnam. But I wanted to be able to say something about the assassination without preaching. So the story really is all about these crazy characters and how they live. But at the end, I turned the whole thing around and made a statement on Kennedy's assassination that I think resonates, because it's such a surprise.
So you set out to make a personal story, and it turned out political?
In the end, absolutely, yes. But during the film, it's not political. During the film, it's like the strata. It's a very strange story that takes place in Coney Island. Mm-hmm. And then ends up a certain way. You have to see it. It's a very unusual story structure. But it ends up me saying something that I think is important to say.
Yeah, right. Now, you actually animated much of the film yourself, not with a crew of animators. So what was that like, returning to this sort of work?
Well, when I was a young man, I went to work for an animation company, Terry Toons, and I made my living by animating and directing my own films and doing drawings. Then they made me a director, so I stopped animating and I started to direct animators. This was going all the way home, all the way back to the 60s when I used to earn my living animating. It felt great. It felt like going home again. It was wonderful. It was the best thing I've done in years. And it was also good to be able to do everything and not have to direct people. Directing people is great, but it's also not fun. In other words, you hate to tell an artist what to do. It's always very difficult. I direct myself. I got no problem. I just do what I want, you know. So everything felt very good. It felt like going home again. I felt young again. And it was a great experience for me.
I'm sure. Now, you always, in your previous work, you always push the envelope. You know, you're trying all sorts of experimental things in your films. Do you still have that urge?
Well, yes. Without it, I'd be bored to tears. In other words, there's no reason to do things over and over again. This film is like nothing I've ever done. First of all, the story structure is like nothing I've ever done or I've seen in animation. What I wanted to do in 25 minutes is take it a full feature film length of material, like Heavy Traffic, and bring it down to 25 minutes. I also went back to full animation, drawing on paper, but because of the computer, which is very slick, all the studios are now using computer animation, it freed me to take, when we were young, we used to take our animation before computers and try to make it as slick as possible, as Warner Brothers and Disney, you know, very good line, the color's the same. The color's the same in every scene. Here, I wanted to make it human because the computer does that. So the lines are very rough and colors change and backgrounds change color, all telling the story, not arbitrarily. Yeah. All emotionally telling the story, and that worked, I think.
Well, the movie is out, so we can go and decide for ourselves. It's available on Vimeo. Thank you so much, Ralph.
All right, thank you. Sei gesund.
Sei gesund. Now, skateboarding used to be rare in Uganda, but less than a decade ago, a skateboarding movement began a revolution, which is having an impact on the urban youth of Kampala and other cities. French NGO works side by side with the Skateboarders Union of Uganda, creating charity events to sponsor young people in the East African nation. More in this report by Daniel Campos.
The main goal behind the organization is to promote skateboarding in Uganda and to send a shipment of skateboarding equipment to Uganda every 2 months. Vul Petit Ougandais is an organization based in the city of Toulouse in France. The founder of the organization is professional skateboarder Jean-Claude Guérard, a native from the Ivory Coast, now based in France. The idea of the non-profit organization began when he came across some photographs taken by Swiss photographer Jan Gross, who traveled several times to Kitintale to capture some breathtaking moments of kids on skateboards in a country where the streets aren't perfectly paved and the sport is relatively new. The sport only began to spread its roots in 2006. Pioneered by local Ugandan skateboarder Jack Mubiru, considered by most as the father of skateboarding in the country. Mubiru's role is similar to that of the West Coast Z-Boys, who in the mid-70s revolutionized skateboarding in the United States. Last week in Paris, the organization displayed its exhibition The Road to Mukono in collaboration with Yvette Productions. A display of the works of over 80 artists on customized skateboards at the Quartier General 71, Rue de la Fontaine au Roi. The fundraiser for the event was made possible through an ongoing art auction on eBay, and the final objective is clear: to focus on young Ugandans to avoid turning to crime in a country where the crime rate is high. And even beyond that, to encourage professionalism among the youngsters, who may soon represent their nation internationally. The Ugandan Skateboard Union, together with Skate Aid in Africa, has already started training hard younger skateboarders to prepare for the Olympics, which may likely to happen in coming years.
In a moment, we'll hear about the banjo and its history, but first, here's our cultural recommendation for today.
Over the course of his long career, Picasso devoted himself to sculpture enthusiastically, using both traditional and unconventional materials and techniques. For Picasso, sculpture occupied a uniquely personal and experimental role. He approached the medium with the freedom of self-taught artists ready to break all the rules. In 1966, through the large Paris retrospective Hommage à Picasso, the public became fully aware of this side of his work. Currently on exhibition at the MoMA, Picasso Sculpture's sweeping survey of Picasso's innovative and influential work in 3 dimensions. This will be the first such museum exhibition in the United States in nearly half a century.
Daniel Campos is joining me now in the studio. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Dan.
So, very interesting topic today, and I have to say, I'm personally interested because when I get to the States, it's always the Southeast where bluegrass is kind of big, a lot of banjo playing going around, and now you can tell me how it got there.
Very interesting. Even bluegrass, we associate this type of music with white people, and obviously the banjo is mostly associated in America with white music. Well, it's pretty much well researched and everything. The roots of the instrument are in Africa. The first time we can see a similar type of instrument is in a painting from 1785, 1790 by John Rose, a slave owner from South Carolina. The name of the painting is The Old Plantation. You can see it's made out of gourd.
It's definitely a banjo, no question about that.
From like a pumpkin type of instrument.
Okay.
And we have it today, like in West Africa, for example, this instrument very common in Senegal and Gambia and in some parts of Guinea, the akanting. Well, let's have a listen. This musician who plays this very ancient instrument, some people believe it could be one of the forefathers of this.
The banjo.
Senegal, c'est sa vie.
Certainly a similar sound.
And 5 strings, just like the banjo as well. And the 5th string has also a similar purpose to that of the banjo's 5th string. We have right now a comeback of the...
I'm sorry, what is the special role of the 5th string?
It's sort of bassy. It gives a little bit of a bass touch.
All right.
We now have a comeback of the gourd banjo, which is basically what we saw in the painting. People creating instruments that look like that. Perhaps we can have a listen at very famous banjo player Rhiannon Gibbs playing on her own gourd banjo.
I could listen to that all day. Yeah, all right. So you're telling us that this came from Africa. It came with all of the good music it comes from black people in America. There's nothing that the whites developed on their own.
I mean, look, the whites developed their own styles of music and derived their own versions of the instrument. And like you said, bluegrass, country music, different types of folk music. I think it's absolutely wonderful. 400 years of the slave trade from the transatlantic, terrible suffering. But the good thing...
But at least the banjo came out.
The banjo, yeah, and some great music.
Thanks, Daniel.
To finish today, perhaps we can have a listen at Gibson Brothers from their latest album, Brotherhood.
We'll get right to that. First, I'd like to say goodbye Thank you all for watching us today. We'll be back tomorrow, of course. Until then, you can check out our website, i24news.tv, and see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye. Here's the banjo.
Gonna pack my grip to travel, gonna sing my farewell song. You're gonna wake up in the morning and find your daddy gone. I'm gonna be gone. I'm gonna be gone. Long gone. Long gone. You're gonna wake up and find your daddy gone. Won't be no need to worry. Won't be no need to cry. My grip is packed to travel, and I'm gonna say goodbye. I'm gonna be gone. I'm gonna be gone. Long gone. Long gone. You're gonna wake up